when we start having sleep problems, we need to identify why. Why are we having problems sleeping? And ironically, with sex, a lot of people don't necessarily connect the two. That lack of not just sleep, but deep quality REM sleep is much more than just an activity that we do. It affects how we are biologically created and our ability to bond and have intimacy. So this is where our bonding mechanisms take place, is during REM sleep. But when we get in the bedroom, it's time to look up here. How's your rest? Not just sleep, but your rest. You're not breathing. If your brain and your heart is not getting oxygen at night, guess what else is not getting oxygen? And that's what happens. Those small vessels in the penis are losing oxygen, so they die. It's just like anything else with sleep apnea. During REM sleep is when those growth hormones are released. We hear this all the time, right? But we never really kind of put it together. Growth hormone is testosterone, estrogen. So we know that for a fact. That's when it's released. That's when our emotional processes are optimized. Those networks, those interlying networks of everything that happens, those good, those bad things, that's when we process all of that during REM sleep. I think one of the big myths potentially is that erectile dysfunction is due to lack of testosterone, or it's due to stress or your physical aging. That's not necessarily the case. It could just be due to sleep apnea. For women, same thing. They may be experiencing vaginal dryness, or they're just not motivated to have sex again. What's your rest look like? What's your sleep look like? We actually do have as tests that we send out, and we measure those neurotransmitters, and we figure out, is this the issue?
Welcome back to Sleep Reimagined, and with Valentine's Day right around the corner, today we're diving into something that most people never really connect to: sleep, their desire, intimacy, and sexual health. And Nyree is going to dive into why great sex actually starts in your sleep and the brain science behind better sex. So, cheers. Hi, Nyree.
Cheers. Hey, Layla, to good sleep and better sex.
Cheers.
Happy
So,
Valentine's Day.
happy early Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
So, this is such a good conversation, and I think that a lot of people really don't think about great sex being tied to good sleep.
Absolutely.
So, let's dive into it. So, Nyree, when people think about libido or intimacy issues, I feel like sleep is usually the last thing to blame, last thing that may even come to mind. But why should sleep actually maybe be one of the first places we really look?
The beauty behind sleep is that because it's a biological necessity, we often see sleep being affected as a secondary effect. And this is really all encompassing, whether it's sex, problems, life, experiences. It doesn't matter. Like, our emotions are closely tied to REM sleep. And so when we start having sleep problems, we need to identify why. Why are we having problems sleeping? And ironically, with sex, a lot of people don't necessarily connect the two. That lack of not just sleep, but deep quality REM sleep is much more than just an activity that we do. It affects how we are biologically created and our ability to bond and have intimacy. So this is where our bonding mechanisms take place, is during REM sleep.
That's so interesting. I think that, like we said, it's something that would never really cross your mind at all. So it is so interesting to hear that. And I know you often say that libido actually lives in the brain, or it does live in the brain and not the body. So can you kind of explain a little bit about how the brain controls your desire and your intimacy?
Absolutely. So if fundamentally, and this is just us still being animals of this planet, fundamentally, we've got to feel safe. We have two mechanisms: fight or flight, sympathetic and parasympathetic. And sex kind of borders on both of them, but it's, it, for lack of a better word, it kind of congregates all of our emotions. So specifically with sex, there's four main neurotransmitters or hormones I like to identify with sex specifically. And just to keep the basics, again, I consider myself a clinical sleep scientist and a brain health specialist. And for that reason, we look at sleep from a neurological perspective for brain health. So, with that being said, when it comes to sleep and sex, we definitely look at dopamine, our
Mhm,
happy, motivating neurotransmitter, testosterone for men, estrogen for women, and progesterone for women. But there's another one that is often overlooked, cortisol,
mhm,
right? So when those different neurotransmitters and hormones come into play and it's time to play, how do they all fit into the big picture? So when we say libido lives in our brains, how many times have we said as women, oh, I just don't feel like it, right? It's a lot more than I don't feel like it. Why don't you feel like it? This is the man of your life. You may be married to him. Yeah, you know him, but he's comfortable and he's safe.
mhm.
Why don't you feel like it? So again, sleep is a secondary effect of something we maybe need to look in deeper in our brains.
Absolutely. And we talk about sleep and getting good sleep and things like that, but what, we talk about REM sleep specifically so often, but what exactly is REM sleep and why is it so critical specifically for sexual health and emotional bonding?
Absolutely. So REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement. Um, the idea is that when we see brain waves, when we get into REM sleep, our eyes do this fluttering thing. And just historically, prior to our devices and our monitors and our equipment, they actually just looked at rapid eye movement to determine when we're in REM sleep. So rapid eye movement, but more specifically, this is where our emotions become processed. This is when we just kind of go through a download of today's events. This is where emotional processing occurs. This is where growth hormone is escalated. And this is when we actually regulate and restore our brain chemicals tied to desire, sex, and love.
It is so interesting that there's so much that goes into sleep because for the average person, they think they're going to sleep, they're shutting down, they're not thinking about what actually happens while they're sleeping. And I know everyone kind of probably has said this or heard this at some point, but most people will say or feel like they might sleep better after sex. So, what's actually happening in the brain and the nervous system when that actually occurs?
Yeah, it's actually such a beautiful thing that occurs because from a neurological perspective, right? And it's a parasympathetic mode. This is our flight. This is our relax. This is the time when the dopamine, our motivating hormones are released. This is when oxytocin is released. This is when prolactin, we think of prolactin with babies and mothers. But this is also important, actually, when the nipples and the uterus are stimulated, when prolactin is released, and we have that bonding mechanism with our partner. So there's so many, and for men, testosterone, their oxytocin shows up as vasopressin, and this is their bonding hormone. So even guys like to cuddle afterwards. Why is that? Because after sex, this is when they're at the highest levels, and so that's when it becomes important, and that's why sleep is such a detrimental impact to this. If men don't have proper testosterone levels because they're not sleeping and women don't have proper estrogen levels because they're not sleeping, things occur and that bonding is broken. And, sometimes we look at it as like, oh, I want to, like, my testosterone levels are good, but I'm just still not interested, right?
Mhm.
Because you have to remember it's a system. It's not a one or done. No one is exclusive, but we have fight hormones, we have flight hormones, we have neurotransmitters, and they all work together to suppress or elevate or balance.
And I think talking about that a little bit and with your partners, it can be frustrating to your partner if someone
Absolutely.
feels like they're not in the mood or
Yeah.
their libido's low or they're not
Hmm.
feeling the same way
Right.
their partner is. And if someone does have low libido, or at what point should low libido actually be seen as a warning sign of sleep deprivation more so than a relationship issue or a hormonal issue?
Again, it's both. I don't want to, I think, like, we said at the beginning, no one looks at sleep as an effect of why we have low libido, why our sex drive, why our motivation just to have sex isn't there. Even for women, they start, in addition to experiencing lower estrogen that creates vaginal dryness, that makes their libido go lower. Could it just be something as simple as I'm not getting the proper rest? Same
Mhm,
thing for men. I love her. I'm attracted to her, but I just don't understand why I can't get it up. Right?
mhm,
It could be erectile dysfunction due to sleep apnea. This is very big among our men who don't think about, they think it's an age thing. No, I'm
mhm,
not co-signing that. It's not necessarily an age thing. It could be sleep apnea. And if you don't have a sleep partner, you don't know that you stop breathing at night. Right. So there's so many other factors when now, like I said, when your sleep is affected, and this is across the board, not just for sex, when your
mhm,
sleep is affected, you got to dive deep because that's a secondary effect to something else primary. Find the root cause. And so, yes, communication is definitely, a big thing. I'm not a sex therapist. I'm just saying from a neurological perspective, you could go to therapy. You could have the same, we talk, we communicate, we go out, we hang out. But when we get in the bedroom, mm, it's time
mhm,
to look up here. How's your rest? Not just sleep, but your rest. And
mhm.
that's what, we have to step back and look at. And that's what we do at Prosomnia Sleep Health and Wellness. We actually do run neurotransmitter tests in addition to hormonal tests. So, testosterone and estrogen hormones, but we also
Mhm,
look at the neurotransmitters. Do you have high cortisol? Do you have high serotonin? Where's your glutamate? Where's your GABA? How does all this come into play? Remember, it's a system. So we take a look at the other issues within that system and we try to identify, is this really a REM sleep issue? If it is, we will definitely bring you in and get you some resolution,
mhm.
with a prosomnia sleep therapy if you're able.
And that is such a good point to bring up, and it's amazing that you can figure that out and help people figure that out because beyond this, when people don't think about sleep, they might assume maybe they're depressed or assume all
Absolutely.
these other factors. And I think depression is probably one of those that also your cortisol is affected when you're depressed, and there's all this biological things going on, and sleep would never really come to the thought
Absolutely.
process. You might
Yeah.
lose sleep thinking about it, quite honestly, and
Yeah.
feel that stress at night, which wouldn't be
Absolutely.
helpful whatsoever. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely, we're look, call it what you will. I'm a
mhm,
huge advocate personally. Like sex is a form of communication. You need that in a relationship. And if your sleep, if you're too tired and you're too sleep and not for nothing, Layla. I mean, let's talk
mhm,
about it, right? Women are
right,
big on this. Like, okay, I'm tired. I don't feel like I'm tired. That's not an excuse, right?
mhm,
I'm not co-signing that. That is not an excuse. And from here moving forward, if you're tired, deal with it. If you're tired, call me. Like, let's fix that. That's not fair to your husband, your mate, your significant other, whatever. Like,
mhm,
that sex is a form of communication. And if it's affected by your rest, not just your sleep, we need to talk about it.
mhm,
And that's one of our premises. Like, I'm not saying we're going to fix your sex life, but we're definitely going to look at sleep from a neurological perspective and how that might come into play. Your estrogen, your hormones, for men as well, your testosterone, they have their own issues as well. Nobody's talking about, okay, again, tell them a
mhm,
business, but I'm in that age group. I'm
mhm,
meeting men between the ages of 50s and 60s who are single guys who don't realize they have sleep apnea. But when they can't get it up, they don't think about sleep. It's a low. I need some Viagra. I'm getting older. No, no,
mhm,
you can't sleep. You're not breathing. If your brain and your heart is not getting oxygen at night, guess what else is not getting oxygen? And that's what
mhm,
happens. Those small vessels in the penis are losing oxygen. So they die. It's just like anything else with sleep apnea. And that is the importance that you get to the bottom of it ahead of it. And so again, we offer sleep apnea tests to everybody. Like let's
mhm.
let's figure out, is this the problem? Nobody thinks about sleep and erectile dysfunction.
At
So that's what
all.
we're here
I had
for.
no idea that sleep apnea had anything to
Absolutely,
do with
1,000%, 1,000%. It's not just your fingers and your toes and your memory loss. It's Your penis. Like their penis. Like it's for real. Nobody's talking about that. That's what happens with sleep apnea. You hear about it, you hear more so about it with diabetes, right?
Mhm,
The loss of fingers and toes due to lack of circulation. Just from a foundational standpoint, a glucose molecule is very large. So when it
mhm,
gets into those small blood vessels, it blocks it. So if it's not getting blood, it's not getting oxygen. So they
mhm,
start to die and die and die. But what else also prevents them from getting oxygen is sleep apnea. So if that proper oxygenation throughout the night, because you're snoring or you're overweight, and testosterone is low and things happen, guess what else is going to go down?
and it's
So
so interesting hearing this for the first time ever, right? I've never heard that, and I don't know too much about sleep apnea, but I know that it's common for people that are overweight as well. Not always, but some people that are overweight do suffer from sleep apnea. And I feel like if they have low sex drive or low libido, they'll probably assume it's, oh, I'm overweight or I'm insecure, I'm not comfortable in my body, or I'm out of energy
everything,
because I feel heavier or
right,
whatnot. So
right.
it's
And
interesting
this
to
is this
hear
is
about
this
that.
is absolutely part of our mission to educate people on sleep. We again, I say this in every episode. There's two things we were never taught, finances and sleep.
Hmm.
Got sleep all day. Okay. And part of that is, our inability to understand what actually happens in our bodies, physiologically and neurophysiologically, when we can't not just sleep, rest. It is such an important perspective of us being humans. We need to let our bodies and our minds rest. But in the sense of sleep apnea, when we gain weight, remember every sleep is a secondary effect of everything. It's a domino effect, right? So it's like, okay, fine, we gain weight. Then we have sleep apnea, right? That sleep apnea is from the weight. We gain weight everywhere. Our airways are included. Our necks get this big. We should always be able to do this at all times. If it's a problem, it's time to, you got it, girl. You're fine.
God.
You good. You good. But when you can't do that anymore, you need to start thinking about sleep apnea because you're collapsing your airways. Your tongue gains weight, your chin gains weight, your cheek gains weight. Everything collapses. That's more weight, more weight. Now you have sleep apnea. Now you can't breathe at night. Now you're losing oxygen. Now you can't remember. Now you have daytime sleepiness. Now you have erectile dysfunction. Like it's this terrible cycle. And again, when we're not motivated to have sex, what? Let's bring it back. It's a problem. There's a problem somewhere we need to evaluate. Let's look at our sleep.
Absolutely. And even like talking about good sleep and poor sleep, but and REM sleep specifically, but how does poor sleep or especially lack of REM sleep actually disrupt your hormones? For example, like testosterone and estrogen and also neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin.
Absolutely. So during REM sleep is when those growth hormones are released. We hear this all the time, right? But we never really kind of put it together. A growth hormone is testosterone, estrogen. So we know that for a fact. That's when it's released. That's when our emotional processes are optimized. Those networks, those interlying networks of everything that happened to those good, those bad things, that's when we process all of that during REM sleep. So if that's fragmented, our ability to release oxytocin that binds us to our partner, our ability to release vasopressin for men that binds us to our partner, prolactin, dopamine, all those feel good hormones during sex are minimized or declined because we can't rest, right? And so that's why at Prosomnia Sleep, we look at neurotransmitters. Where are your neurotransmitters? And I don't just talk about the good sex hormones. Where's your serotonin? That depresses those hormones. Where's your cortisol? Where's your acetylcholine? Because ultimately, and we know as women, if we don't feel safe, we're not going to have a good sexual experience. So
Mhm.
it's a network. It's all at play. It's not just about not being able to go to sleep at night. It's about what's happening in our brains and how we connect with our partners.
Absolutely. And we kind of touched on it earlier about having low sex drive or depression playing a part in that, right? So people that, a lot of people are on either sleep medications or antidepressants, but how do those medications really affect REM sleep and sexual function?
I really think I need to put some sort of disclaimer out before I say this.
Hmm.
I am not pro or against, depressants, medications, sleep medications, but they do minimize our ability to have great sexual experiences. It does affect us neurologically. There's nothing, again, like a huge antidepressant, they call them SSRIs, serotonin selective receptor inhibitors, right? The idea is to amplify our serotonin to make us more mentally healthy or balanced. However, the consequence of that in that fine print, which they told you, so it's
Hmm.
not really like they didn't tell you. It's just you will see that a lot of times. I see that a lot of times. A lot of our patients are mistakenly diagnosed with depression or some other mental health issue because they have the inability to get a quality REM sleep. So they're put on antidepressants, which are usually these blocking type of medications that block our ability to release dopamine, estrogen, GABA, all the important sleep hormones and neurotransmitters necessary to get into REM sleep, which again, it's a network that thereby inhibit our ability to have fulfilling sexual relationships.
Absolutely. And I don't know much about antidepressants or anything. Disclaimer also, I am not,
Yeah,
medically, educated in that way at all. But I think that is something that is common when people do go on antidepressants. I think that's one of the things
absolutely.
that are talked
Mhm.
about the most and
Yeah.
people struggle with being on antidepressants and maybe
Yeah,
even
and it's important to balance both. It's not like, one's better than the other. I think you have great sex, you have great mental health, but sometimes that's not always the case. But the objective is to optimize that, and balance out the side effects of that medication that some people do need. But that's also we do medication management and Prosomnia sleep health and wellness for that reason. Same thing with sleep medications. A lot of sleep medications sedate, but
Mhm.
just because they sedate does not mean they restore and provide the optimum restorative benefits of REM sleep. So again, that's why we definitely we promote we're not sedation, we're restoration, for our personality sleep therapy. That's what we definitely focus on to get people the restorative benefits of REM sleep, not just put you in a REM sleep, get you the restorative benefits of balancing out those neurotransmitters that are important during, sex.
And that is so interesting too because when I touch on antidepressants, I feel like people talk about that more so than sleep medication.
Yeah.
And, I've taken an over the counter, like NyQuil or, and it's basically what you said. It is like a sedative. Like it knocks you out, but you don't
Yes,
particularly wake up feeling rested. You might wake up actually feeling
absolutely.
groggier or
Exactly.
even more
Again,
tired and fatigued.
it's doing what it is supposed to do. If the disclaimer didn't lie, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean it's helpful. I'm still don't feel connected to my partner. I still don't wanna have sex because 'cause I'm sleepy as hell. It's like, we have fundamental requirements. Sleep supersedes sex. I'm sorry, that's the reality of it. If I'm tired, we say, "Maybe I'm tired." Like, no,
Mhm.
but okay, once or twice, fine, but we really have to talk about what's really going on. You're only gonna be sedated for so long before your relationship starts breaking. You know what I mean? So
Right.
at some point, we gotta talk about this.
Absolutely. And we were talking about sleep apnea earlier, but sleep apnea isn't just something people usually associate with sex, like we said, but how does sleep apnea really quietly destroy intimacy in both men and women?
Absolutely, and, I directed, specifically towards men and erectile dysfunction. When you stop breathing at night, your oxygen stop excuse me, when you stop breathing at night, your oxygen saturation goes down. When your blood oxygen saturation goes down, the whole purpose of your blood is to deliver oxygen to all those organs, right? Your blood, your heart, your kidneys, and your penis, right? So if that's not getting oxygen and, a man starts experiencing erectile dysfunction, his partner might want to consider, like, does he snore at night? Does he stop breathing? These are real side effects and consequences of sleep apnea. So, hey, give us a call. We got sleep apnea exams all day long. We
Mhm.
can send it to their house, get a sleep apnea exam, figure out what's going on. If that's the case, then we'll do some proactive measures to minimize the sleep apnea, and then you can deal with the erectile dysfunction going later. With
Mhm.
women, not getting into REM sleep, estrogen for us, is the oxytocin, our ability to bond. If we're not getting into REM sleep, we lose that ability. I've been with this man for 20 something years. Okay, fine. But no, same thing. It decreases estrogen. Those growth hormones aren't released as much as they used to. And then naturally as age, progression, menopause, we always hear, oh, she's in her 50s, she's dry, or she's got, vaginal dryness or whatever. That's a consequence of estrogen. That's true. However, is it a situation that your estrogen is low because you're not getting quality rest? Let's not add to the problem. Let's make sure, we hit all the dots before we start reaching for hormone replacement therapy. And that also includes our metabolic dysregulations start occurring, right? Let's acknowledge our weight gain. We ain't cute like we used to be. All right, let's talk about it, because it's not just about gaining weight. It's also for women, obstructive sleep apnea. It's not cute to be snoring louder than your man. You know what I mean? I'm sorry to say, call it what you will, but
I
that's the
mean,
reality of
true. Right.
you know what I'm
It's
saying?
not cool when your man snoring
So,
so loud either.
we're not the only ones that snore, ladies. So
Snoring
as
is
we start
sexy,
getting
right?
exactly, when we start gaining weight, all those muscles start relaxing, our airways relax on top of putting weight, same issue, right? And then it's like, ugh,
Mhm.
she's snoring louder than me. I think I'm gonna go sleep on the couch, and see what's going on, on Sports Center, and I'm gonna fall asleep. So now he's sleeping on the couch because you snore louder than he does.
Mhm.
Now it's not one night, it's a week, it's a month. And he's a man, you're a woman, you still have your needs, but neither one of y'all sleep together. So we've lost the ability to bond in bed. We don't have sex like we used to, and we're snoring each other out the house. And we're not getting quality sleep,
Mhm.
right? There's a real thing called sleep divorce. When you sleep in the other room because you or your man is too loud, because I got to get up and go to work in the morning, and I can't sleep with you sounding like that because you don't want to get any help and call Prosomnia sleep. It's real,
Right.
right?
It is
And
very
so, yeah,
common.
get some help. There's help out there for it.
Mhm.
So, don't think like you got to wait till you go to the doctor. Pick up the phone, call us. 954-852-4554. It doesn't have to be like this.
There you go, and we'll make sure to include that in the show notes too. It's so interesting because I don't think, like we talked about it, people don't equate
Yeah.
sleep with that, but it's super common for people to
Mhm.
eventually not be able to be compatible while they sleep for whatever
Yeah.
reason it is, mostly sleep apnea and snoring, and people would usually assume that it's health related, it's weight related, it's all these things, and not ever think about it being sleep
Right.
related. So I think it's really important for people to hear that, because I don't think people particularly want to sleep in different rooms
No,
or
no,
rooms or
absolutely not. And it's not healthy. You know,
Mhm.
when people, I don't know if people realize, but when you sleep together, you and your partner, your heart rate synchronize. It's such a beautiful thing. That bonding. Men bond just like women do. It's a beautiful thing. This is what we're supposed to do. But when we have sleep issues, when we have too much stress, too high of cortisol, too low estrogen, whatever, like whatever the situation is, you know, sleep is a secondary effect. We got to figure out what the root cause is.
Absolutely, and talking about men and women and how things are processing for each gender, do men and women experience the impact of poor REM sleep on intimacy differently in different ways?
Absolutely. So with women, like I said, we have estrogen. And with that, we have the bonding. We're big on the prolactin and the oxytocin, right? Those are really, those are like they simultaneously work with estrogen. So if estrogen drops, progesterone, oxytocin drops. And same thing for men. The counterpart to that, testosterone and vasopressin. For them, it's a bonding. It's that aggression. It's that protective. They want to be safe. They want to provide safety, and women want to, feel safe. So it's a give and take thing, and our neurotransmitters are completely compatible for those two states, right? But when those are dysregulated or out of order, we need to kind of, as a couple, how's your sleep? When was the last time you asked your partner, how's your sleep? Like, other than, I hear him snoring at night, or you come, and vice versa, he's hitting you or knocking you over, whatever. We need to take responsibility as a couple for each other's rest, right? How are you resting? What's going on up here? Are you cranky at work? What's going on? I need to know what's going on with my partner at work, because what's going to happen? He's going to bring that home. He's going to bring that into the bed. Babe, what's wrong? Oh, I got too much on my mind. I can't right now. Wait, what? Like, you've been doing this a lot. Like, is it me? You see how this domino effect can just kind of, because they're not resting. And I'm not saying you're not going to have stress, you're not going to have issues, but if you're not resting and you're getting your clear brain, you're consolidating, you're letting your mind rest and your emotions regulate. This is all part of it. It's not a one or done. They're not exclusive. They're mutually exclusive. So that's what we really need to start looking at.
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot about physical intimacy, right? But beyond physical intimacy, how does REM sleep really influence emotional safety and bonding and the connection in relationships?
We see it a lot when, you'll see a couple and they're together, and, that honeymoon phase, right? When you first meet somebody, it's like you're inseparable, and it's like you can't get enough of each other. That's all part of it. That's all that, ironically, all the oxytocin and the vasopressin and the dopamine, all that actually supersedes your prefrontal cortex. You ever notice how when you fall in love, you get stupid? Beyonce, crazy in love.
Absolutely.
You don't know what, that whole temporary, it's all that. It's those neurotransmitters rushing, flooding your prefrontal cortex, your logic. Your friends and your family are telling you, oh, I don't know about this one. It doesn't matter. I love him. All that, right? And that's the beautiful thing. That's neurotransmitters. That's all those coming into play. And all those are important when you're having sex. Those come in, that protection, that safety. He's the bad guy, but he makes you feel safe, right? And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. If you're not in an emotional, safe relationship, you're not going to have great sex. And all that happens during REM sleep. Our emotional regulation and our ability and our stability comes into place during REM sleep. And we have to give our minds the opportunity to compartmentalize all those different emotions that we have with these relationships and with sex. So if you're not getting that, and that's fragmented or it's cut off, you're not able to achieve that. You're also not able to achieve those heightened, beautiful moments of a sexual relationship.
Absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people are listening now who this is resonating with, right? So
Yeah.
for someone who is listening who feels maybe disconnected from their partner or disconnected from their own sex life in general, or has maybe felt like they've lost desire, how would you kind of reframe what they're experiencing from a brain health perspective?
Absolutely. So look at it. Like, are you getting rest? Are you less tolerable? So, another thing with vasopressin and oxytocin, it's that we become more tolerable of our partners. When we have sex and we release those hormones and those neurotransmitters, it's like, okay, fine. It's always make up sex, right? And that's part of it. It's okay, fine. I forgive you. We reconnect, we rebond, we reprocess, and we become one, as you will say again, because we re-regulate, right? And if we're not rested, we don't have the mental capability to do that. We're just too tired. Like, that's the last thing on our minds. So then you shut out your partner without fully even understanding why. Looking at, am I cranky? Have I rested? Am I only moving off of 3 hours of sleep? That's not their fault. That's your fault.
Mhm.
You need to be responsible for getting proper rest and having the emotional proper regulation for your partner. That's part of a healthy relationship. And sex is part of that. That's when it's released. You become more forgiving, you become more tolerable, when you can get to REM sleep and have a quality sexually healthy relationship. You're stressed. Okay, fine. Stress management. You're overloaded, no problem. Talk to your partner. That's also part of it. Knowing that you have a safe space, an emotionally safe space to talk about other things besides sex. Life is hard. That's a life partner. That's what it's supposed to be about. And rest is part of that. We need to let our minds rest and regulate and reset. That's
Mhm.
the importance of REM sleep in a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. And we talk about low libido and things like that, and we focus a lot on partnership too. But you even said, for example, being out there and meeting guys and dating and things like that and looking for a partner. Single people are probably having the same issues, like you said, without a sleep partner, you might not realize it.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting too that you're bringing awareness to that as a whole too, that maybe single people with sleep apnea might be able to reflect now and think, oh, well,
Absolutely.
maybe this is affecting more in my life in different ways that,
Yeah.
maybe not come up into that.
Daytime sleepiness is not okay.
Mhm.
Being too tired to have sex is cause for concern. Sex is great. Dopamine, just everything. It's fantastic. Enjoy it. But if you're not, it might be time to consider why. Am I getting proper rest? Am I on other medications that may be affecting that? Like,
Mhm.
is the stress at work really bothering me much more than I would like to think so? In
Mhm.
reference to our other episode, look at your wearable device if you have one.
Mhm.
Is your blood oxygen level going down? Are there gaps in your sleep that your watch is not picking up? It is time to give Prosomnia Sleep a call. Let
Mhm.
us help you. Let us help you navigate through that. This is all we do is talk to people about sleep and their rest and how that affects the other areas of their life. So definitely REM sleep is absolutely an important part of sexual health and brain health.
Absolutely. And talking about prosomnia, you've developed prosomnia sleep therapy, or PST for short. But how does restoring REM sleep actually help people regain desire and balance their hormones and really truly feel connected again?
So at Prosomnia Sleep Health and Wellness, we have what's called the only Prosomnia Sleep Therapy, PSTX that you referred to it. What we do is we use anesthesia to induce natural restorative REM sleep and reset neurological health. And not only do we do that and the benefits of restorative REM sleep. So once you wake up, it's that, oh my God, this is the best sleep I've ever had because we release adenosine sleep pressure, dopamine. We try to reset testosterone and estrogen and prolactin. And those are all the neurotransmitters we look for when you come to prosomnia and get prosomnia sleep therapy. We help you regulate those. It's not a one or done. This is a therapy. This has been a long term issue or side effect or whatever. But this is all we do. We only do sleep. We don't do butts, babies, or toes, but we absolutely do sleep all day long. And we help you kind of navigate through that process of getting natural restorative REM sleep on your own.
Absolutely. And if someone is listening now and realizing that their intimacy struggles may actually be sleep related or a sleep problem, what are the first steps that they should really start taking even as early as today?
Like I said, first and foremost, take personal accountability. It
Mhm.
is absolutely your responsibility. And as a partner, if you even suspect that your partner may have a sleep problem, help them. Call,
Mhm.
make an appointment, get an initial consultation. I'll talk to both of you. We'll talk about it. We'll dive deep. Who else can you go to talk about rest and sexual health? Right?
Mhm.
We're here for it. And I say that because ultimately we got to find the root cause. Sleep is a secondary effect of something. What's going on? Is it stress at work? Is it natural metabolic decline in certain hormones? What is it? And it's not a bad thing. This is just the natural course of life. And first and foremost, take personal accountability. Are you tired? Are you getting quality REM sleep? I know you're sleeping, but are you getting quality REM sleep? Do you have daytime sleepiness? Do you lay in bed but still don't feel rested? And then talk to your partner. If you can't talk to your partner, call us 1000%. Because if you're not getting quality rest, you're not getting the restorative benefits of restorative REM sleep.
Absolutely. And talking about this, I think that there's so many myths, right? So, or misunderstanding or lack of knowledge around REM sleep and also sexual health. But what's one myth about sleep and sex that you just wish would disappear?
Oh, that's a good question. I
Mhm.
don't know because I think, people just usually just like you knock out. I mean, if it's at night, right? That's another thing. Like, if you knock out 1000%, it was a great, great time.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's necessarily any myths, but what I can definitely say is you definitely sleep good after sex.
Mhm.
Good sleep is great sex. We're great promoters on that. Another thing, like I said, to just circle back to the importance of making sure you're getting quality REM sleep and or identifying if you have sleep apnea. I think one of the big myths, especially with older men over the age of 50 potentially, is that erectile dysfunction is due to lack of testosterone or it's due to stress or your physical aging. That's not necessarily the case. It could just be due to sleep apnea. Erectile dysfunction is absolutely a side effect of sleep apnea. And for women, same thing. I'm experiencing, they may be experiencing, vaginal dryness or they're just not motivated to have sex again. What's your
Mhm.
rest look like? What's your sleep look like? Because that's all a part of it. It's not just your estrogen. Again, it's why is your estrogen going down? Is your estrogen going down because you're not getting quality REM sleep? Let's talk about it.
Mhm.
We actually do have tests that we send out and we measure those neurotransmitters and we figure out, is this the issue? You can go to therapy, sex therapy, all of that. But
Mhm.
why? Is it really because you're not getting rest at night? Let's talk about it.
Absolutely. And I think what stands out the most to me with this episode is that intimacy isn't just about desire. It's actually about feeling safe, feeling present, being connected. And those foundations, as you taught us today, are all built during REM sleep. So if anyone's feeling disconnected, it may
Absolutely.
not be about trying harder. It may just be about sleeping better. It could
Amen. I love that.
So, Nyree, thank you so much. And thank you for
Yeah,
really helping us understand how protecting our sleep actually protects our relationships and
absolutely. Yeah.
for helping us really reimagine intimacy through the lens of brain health. I think I learned so much from this and it's
Mhm.
changed my perspective on a lot. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to take a lot from this conversation. So thanks for really showing us what we may have never known and through a lens of brain health.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, Layla, thank you so much. Happy Valentine's Day to good sleep and great sex.
Cheers.
Next time, stay rested,
All
my
right.
friend.
Stay rested. I'll talk to you soon.